then you get kind of the cross pollination of, hey, there's other creators like you that have this type of content. So then you get into all of these people's algorithms. And now you're getting in front of people. People are like, okay, I'm really enjoying that. And that's when you're going to start getting that community. You'll likely start to see some listens trickle in, some followers, all that kind of stuff. So it really builds upon each other. It's not an immediate thing.
It's a marathon, not a race, kind of. Or exactly. Marathon, not a sprint. It is a race. Still a race. Marathons are, in fact, a race.
They are a race. Yeah, they're not fun races, but they are races.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, so I never kind of want to set the expectation of, hey, you make social video, you're going viral. I never want to set that expectation with people. Yeah. We've definitely been making social clips for years. We've gotten some clips to have a few thousand views. To me, I'm like really happy with that. Sometimes we only get like 6. That just happens. So you kind of need to maybe assess the type of content that you're making, look at what you are doing. If you're like, hey, I really want to get all in on this video idea, then that's when you can start kind of assessing the content. But to be quite honest, even the ones that have 6, like that's 6 people that wouldn't have seen this podcast, in my opinion. Right. So I'm happy with that.
That's such an interesting point, because it's super easy to like only look for virality online, but that's still like the 6 people example you just gave. Yeah, that is 6 people that didn't know about something. And I feel like even just like 20 or 30 years ago, like the equivalent of us back then would have been like 6 people listened to my podcast. Like, that's crazy. That's awesome. You know, 6 people is a lot in a lot of ways. If it's 6 quality listeners, it's 6 quality listeners.
And it's a free way to get these people. I mean, if you want
what did it take? You just posted it on Instagram and put a snarky caption on it. Like,
I hate that it was snarky.
I mean, I'm just working with what you give me. Oh. But, it's 6 people. And I don't remember the exact quote. I'm probably getting the number wrong, but I remember reading years ago something to the effect of, you only need 100 dedicated listeners to be like set as a podcaster. It's 100 people who are willing to like stop what they're doing when you post a new episode, or if you have merch, who are willing to support you with merch. That is like kind of end game for a lot of people. And that's great. So, yeah. On the front of like what you can post, obviously clips from your podcast, but let's get more specific, shall we? What do you think makes for like a good post on social media?
I mean, it's really going to kind of depend on your show and the type of audience you want to target. So, for instance, it's you and I, we sit in the Zoom call. I always just use Headliner's video clipping tools. It has this lovely little auto framing feature. So it will just show like our video, which is a talking head style. So it's just literally what you see here, talking heads. It's just our little faces talking. Zooms in on those. And then as the speakers change, it'll kind of swap back and forth. It has some captions. That's probably the most popular style of video that you're going to see out there. Mm-hmm. I had mentioned the avatar style stuff before. So there's all sorts of tools out there. I think even in Zoom, you could honestly turn on like an avatar filter if you can do that.
I'm pretty sure we had like Jesse or somebody do that once on our older version of this podcast.
Rest in peace to the pod.
Yeah, rest in peace to the pod. But yeah.
But yeah, that's a form that's like a subset of talking heads. We mentioned the AI generated stuff. It's kind of hard to ignore that now. You can very easily create video just from text prompts. Mm-hmm. Audiograms, of course, it's going to be kind of the easiest way to create video from a podcast. Doesn't require anything for you to, it doesn't require you to change anything. So especially if you have a very established process, you know how you are going to podcast, you're doing audio purely, but you're like, man, I really want to leverage the power of video. Audiograms are going to be a really great way to kind of start that process, or even just fully use audiograms only for video. Like I know Freakonomics, they are going to be kind of one of the biggest people that I can think of, at least right now, that use audiograms purely on YouTube to get their podcasts out there. And I mean, they've definitely seen a lot of success with podcasting on YouTube, just using audiograms.
Yeah. And then as far as the content of these clips themselves, like it's kind of self-explanatory stuff. It's what you think is going to grab people. Hooks, the emotional moments where maybe you're giving an impassioned plea because everyone loves impassioned pleas on the internet. And or just like even if you have the kind of podcast that facilitates it, you disagreeing with your co-host and you guys kind of bickering, that always does well. We like friction, I'm noticing on the internet. Call me crazy, but we enjoy a bit of friction online. So stuff like that, it's going to grab people. It's going to hold their attention. More informational stuff, if you're a data-driven podcast or you're talking about like issues or something, just actually putting the lead there and being like, hey, this is about X, Y, and Z, and this is what we thought about it as your clip is great. Also, the idea of something like a curiosity gap, right? Which is like, hey, maybe you just maybe you leave a little bit of context out in your clip and you can kind of entice people to continue checking it out. That's an idea. The analogy I always use is look at your podcast as like a full album, 45 minutes on vinyl, on wax, whatever. This is the full story. And then your clip is the promotional single. It's the 4-minute segment of that 45-minute piece that's like great and will grab people and all that stuff. And then as far as like clip length goes, just go dependent off of first the platforms, right? TikTok, you can only upload. Does TikTok have a length limit? I think it's like 10 minutes, but most of them are like a minute or less.
Yeah, TikTok is one of those funny platforms. So it's going to vary kind of depending on your level of creator status.
So if you're like verified, maybe you get longer videos or.
I think so. I'm pretty confident in this. Not 100% wouldn't bet money on it or anything. But I do think that TikTok, in some instances, you can do 30 minutes of video. But again, I think you have to be verified. You have to have like all sorts of stuff met. So I would say for the average person, probably looking at a solid 60-second clip, I would say is probably where you're at.
Probably like the longest you want to go.
Yeah, and I think that's uploading into TikTok. You can only upload 1 minute. I think if you're recording in the app, then that's when you can start getting closer to those like longer 10-minute type clips.
Gotcha. Yeah, that might be it.
But I think that's the distinction with
that makes sense. So. And I think also like, look, just because you have 60 seconds doesn't mean you need to make something 60 seconds long. If your clip is really good for 30 seconds, just use the 30 seconds that are really good, you know?
Revert back to Vine days. Just bring
us back to Vine days. Oh my gosh. Nothing else this week will make me feel more like a dinosaur than the little tear in my eye I got from the mention of Vine.
Oh, I love Vine. I miss Vine so much. But
my back hurts. Thanks for that. Anyway, most important of all, and unlike Vine videos, don't forget to put captions on your clips. That's like arguably one of the most important things you can do, actually.
It really is. Yeah. So captions, I mean, and not necessarily on TikTok, but on other social platforms like Facebook, Instagram, 85% of videos are watched on mute. So you can only imagine, like, if our mouths are just moving, there's no sound coming out. That's a little weird, right?
I don't know. Maybe you're chewing food. I'm not here to judge, but
it could be. I don't know. ASMR,
I guess that's why you need captions, so that we know if you're chewing food or if you're saying something.
Exactly. But the captions are going to not only make sure that people that are watching on mute for whatever reason are able to actually understand what's going on. It's actually just also going to make your content a little bit more engaging. Kind of going back to what we said in the beginning, the more kind of visual elements there are, the more like jumpy it is. So if you have especially like those karaoke captions where text is changing color or it's changing styles or something, that's you're scrolling and you're like, whoa, there's a couple things going on. Your eyes automatically going to go to that. So you're likely to kind of have 1 to 2 seconds more of attention before people make that decision to scroll. Hopefully you made a great clip, whether you manually did it, you let a clipping tool Headliner select it for you, then I'm sorry, I think I'm hilarious. Then again, having just those visual elements is going to kind of hook people in a little bit more naturally.
For sure. And look, it's not just like an engagement editing thing, right? We don't have to, like, I know a lot of people probably hear, oh yeah, put colored captions in, and they think like Mr. Beast immediately. No. We are not Mr. Beast, and we're not saying to edit your videos like Mr. Beast necessarily.